For my second metric, I wanted to give a little twist, right? Because we are talking about metrics, and it seems as if the Buffalo Bills, when we look at this overall stats and metrics that they have, it's pretty good overall, right? They're top 10 in a lot of categories, and offensively and defensively. And if you look at historically for the Buffalo Bills, where four AFC championships, amongst the top teams in wins across the last 5 years, right, Lance? Peter, behind, I believe, the Kansas City Chiefs. You alluded to earlier today.
Yeah, second in wins behind the Chiefs.
So now, for me, when I see all these metrics and I don't see a Lombardi trophy, it's what can the Bills improve on that? Situational football. The Bills have not won the Super Bowl because they don't play good in situational football in crucial moments when they need high level play, high caliber play, the pressure or whatever it is, the situation is. The Buffalo Bills seem to fold under. Field goal miss by the Denver Broncos before they ultimately won the game. Why was that a penalty? Situational football, right? If you was prepared in that situation, ultimately the Buffalo Bills would have won that game against the Denver Broncos. The Buffalo Bills came back. They gave a heroic effort against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles, in their situational football, in the rain, in the wind, they kicked the 59-yard field goal and made it. Our kicker, Tyler Bass, missed the field goal that game. Situational football, when you get the ball first, you want to be able to score and you want to be able to win. That's a big, crucial moment. Situational football. The Buffalo Bills got the ball first against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they ended up punching the ball away. Ultimately, Jalen Hurts, what they did, they end up scoring a touchdown. So ultimately, in my opinion, I would love for the Buffalo Bills in the crucial moments, in the clutch moments, to play better situational football. So that's the little twist I have in terms of what I would love the Buffalo Bills to improve on this season. When it counts the most, when it matters the most, against the Kansas City Chiefs, against the San Francisco 49ers, when them good coordinators is calling their games. I need Joe Brady to call the play. I need Sean McDermott to call the play. I need the players to execute the play. So situational football is something I want the Buffalo Bills to improve on this season.
How about in overtime when they had the ball first and the miscommunication with Gabe Davis?
Yes.
And Josh Allen, right? Gabe ran the wrong route. Josh Allen ran whatever it was, right?
It's situational football.
That's a situational play. And even I totally forgot that 59-yard field goal happened from the Eagles. Now I'm a little sadder just because I just remembered that. But no, yeah, the Gabe Davis one, too many men on the field. Not even just like boneheaded penalties, but Deion Dawkins against Chris Jones, right, in the divisional game. And I get it. Chris Jones is probably the best defensive tackle in football. But that's a situational play, right? Like, it's not even just guys making plays after, like, just continuing making plays. It's you got to make one play. That's a lot of games in the playoffs, especially, come down to one guy making a play, right?
Making a play. That's what it is.
13 seconds.
13 seconds.
That's a huge situational.
Situational football. Fourth and 18 against the Vikings. That's situational football.
Guy not making a play, another guy makes a play on another team. Even the 13 seconds where the special teams was a botch. When they went on defense, no one made a play either, right? Like, you had a chance to go make a play, and then you caveat to 2 years ago when they beat the Chiefs in the division in the regular season, right? Von Miller gets a pressure, and Taron Johnson has a game-sealing interception against the Chiefs in the regular season, right? That's when you make Von Miller gets the pressure, Taron Johnson makes an interception, situational play wins you the football game, right? Like, it's the little things in the National Football League. One play goes the right way. Deion Dawkins blocks Chris Jones and doesn't allow pressure on Josh Allen. We might win that game. That's just how small margins are in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like 13 seconds for me is like, okay. And I think that people hate this take probably, but it's like McDermott is and was a young coach. And so 13 seconds was an experience. And now it's like you've gone through some of these experiences that have really, ultimately in our minds cost this team a Super Bowl or two because of these situations that you haven't necessarily been able to execute or get people on your team to be able to execute put them in the positions to execute in these high leverage situations. And that's got to end now. You're no longer a young coach. You've been a head coach now for 7 years, and now it's time to show us that you've learned from these situations and that you're now able to get your team on the same page and to be able to execute as a whole, as a team in those situations. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I think he does show some semblance of improving that throughout his tenure now, and there's still times when you see mismanagement, and there's for me, I just think like I've given him a pass in some of these past because it's like in some of the past mistakes he's made because it's like all right, you haven't been in this situation necessarily before, but it's like he's probably seen most situations at this point, and that can't happen anymore. There's no more excuse. Like if you can't get yourself and your team prepared to execute in these high leverage situations, like that's on you. And then, that's what's going to increase the noise. People are already clamoring for you to be fired here
Mm-hmm.
in some semblance. And it's like, I think that up until I think starting this year for me, I'm really going to be looking at that, Akeem. I think I'm going to be looking for like no more excuses. You've had your time now to learn
Mhm.
as a head coach, and it's got to be buttoned up.
And that's and that's going to be the key right there, right? What is this? Is this growth, like you said? Was he a young coach before, or is this a trend?
Yeah.
Right?
Is this
Because
your MO? Yeah.
is this your MO when things get tight and when you're playing against the elite coaches, the Shanahans, the McVays, the Stefanskis, and you're in those crucial moments? Are you going to tense up? Are you going to get tight? Because excelling in situational football, in my opinion, it's a coach's thing, and the players is a representation of the coaches. So if you're confident, it's going to show. If you're tense, it's going to show. And I
Mm-hmm.
think your coaches is ultimately the representation of that. Now, I want to take it a step further, and then we're going to continue because I think this is an interesting discussion. What about Joe Brady and his concerns? Because I have concerns with him as well in terms of using a basketball analogy a little bit, right? Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics. What was his MO in terms of a negative talk? He had no left. Jaylen Brown can't go left. Jaylen Brown can't go left.
Mm-hmm.
What about Joe Brady in terms of his offense and how he implements it? He does a great job calling short to intermediate plays. But does he have the game? Does he have the intermediate and long game to erase the predictability from his offense? Because that's the ultimate concern I have with Joe
Mm-hmm.
Brady, is that he can be a tad predictable. So how do you feel about that?
I would say a couple of things, right? Like the predictability is obviously he has to it's kind of learn on the fly almost, right? Like it's kind of similar to Ken Dorsey, what works, what doesn't work when it comes to being predictable. And I think obviously having a veteran leading quarterback, and Josh Allen's getting to that status at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about, but like you kind of can lean on Josh Allen because he's been in these moments and he's been in these situations, right? And I think Joe Brady being in Carolina, right, learning from the mistakes there in Carolina, wasn't fully his fault, wasn't a great situation. Obviously, Matt Rule completely failed in Carolina, belongs in college because he's a great college coach. And then Joe Brady last year, right, he had experience with the Bills, quarterback coach, OC, playoff experience with the Bills last year, right? I think all that will help him succeed in 2024, but the predictability is something there's not a great answer for me to give you because I don't fully know and there's nothing we can really do about it, obviously. But it's something, like I said, he's good at scheming guys open. He's good with the short yardage. He's good with intermediate. And I think this roster is kind of built around that. It really is, right? With the personnel on this team. Obviously, Keon Coleman can stretch the field. Valdez Scantling has been known for being able to stretch the field, but Samuel, obviously, intermediate short guy. Shakir, intermediate short guy. Kincaid, Cook, right? All those guys are intermediate short guys. Obviously, they can take one to the house any time of the week, but I think it's not being super predictable, but I think the personnel helps because I think you have a couple other guys that can do different things. And if Keon Coleman bursts on the scene and becomes a legit deep threat, and MVS maybe is a legit deep threat, then you're not predictable because you have other ways to target defenses. And if you have other options in guys that can go deep, then you won't become predictable. If you will become predictable if you have no other outlet besides short passes and intermediate.
Good answer. What you thinking, Lance?
He muted himself.
Amateur hour.
My bad. I don't think that I'm going to give Joe Brady the same pass because of that past experience that Peter spoke about. So it's not like he's coming in, his first time in this situation anymore. So he's been in this situation, not for years by any means, but now he's seen it at least. And now there should be more, he should have those lessons. And this team as a whole, I think I will hold to that same thing. The time for mismanagement, excuses, miscommunication, and not executing in crunch time in key moments has to end because it's costing the Bills Josh Allen's prime of his career, and it can't happen anymore. This team could potentially have 2 Super Bowls at this point if it weren't for some unfortunate things that whether they're players or coaches, I'm not in the building. I don't know exactly whose fault they are for 13 seconds and some other things there. But like, for all intents and purposes, we could be talking right now with the Bills having a couple of Super Bowls if things go a couple of different ways in key moments. And that's where I am fed up with any narrative that there's just no more room for that in my mind. Like it's got to be executed. The communication has to be there, and you have to be prepared to be able to perform in those situations from the top down. Like you mentioned, comes from the top, trickles down from the top head coach through the offensive coordinator and then to the offensive players as well. So I expect Joe Brady to take this opportunity, take this team, and make it such that they are less predictable. That's something you and I have talked about on the Founders Pod and things like that before, his predictability. But I would like to think that Josh Allen and those guys can really have a voice and say, look, this is, we're getting our heads bashed in here because the people are keen on this. So
Mhm.
let's not do, so hopefully Brady's uh, rep, rep, I guess, rapport with his players and his reputation for having this open communication with his players is going to help avoid that, and that concern will be eliminated. But it's definitely right now something I'm waiting to see on, and I don't think that I'm gonna have a lot of patience because it's like at this point, this team should be able to do these things with the players we have, with the coaches we have, and the lessons they should have already learned. I believe that, the excuses of, oh, this is a growing moment, this is a growth moment, he's learning. Um, I'm just, I don't have a lot of patience for that going forward. And I have had a lot of empathy and a lot of patience in that because I saw the bigger picture. But I just think you know, that bigger picture now is getting smaller as, Josh Allen ages and as, this team gets closer and closer to having to, go through more turnover.